Parents of Reddit, why are you disappointed in your adult child? I'm not disappointed in my 18-year-old, but I sure wish I knew how to activate him. He graduated in May, has no desire to go to college, and no real aspirations at all. He's pretty much been in his room on his phone since. He struggled for many years with anxiety, which we're treating, and I know a lot of things are difficult for him, but man, I wish I knew how to get him excited about something, anything, whether it's a job or a hobby or plan or whatever. Story number 2. Not me, but my uncle. He's a very kind and hardworking man who did everything for his sons, my cousins. While the younger ones are decent and successful persons, the oldest one was always a piece of work. He never finished school or worked in his entire life, and at the same time belittled my uncle for his work. Said things like that he wouldn't even leave his bed for the money my uncle makes, that he is stupid for working for someone else and hadn't understood life. They always believed in him, gave him money so he could open his own stores, or bought him expensive cars, stuff so that he would get motivated and do something with his life. After about 10 years, he's 28 now, and a lot of money, he asked for it again. My uncle told him basically that he wants to see a business plan first, and that he has to wait about 3 months because they're renovating the house. He threw a tantrum and left for a while. In the meantime, his parents renewed the first floor, walls, floor, bathroom, including furniture in his and his brother's rooms. Guys, one day he came back while nobody was home and just lost it. Called my uncle and screamed something about how he has to wait for his money while they were spending it for themselves. And then he smashed the place. Everything new and old. Ripped out the floor and destroyed the bathroom. There was water everywhere and smashed in walls. He slashed furniture and destroyed his brother's electronics. He had to be so angry. I was speechless when I saw it. They threw him back out, took his keys, and haven't heard from him since. But before he fought with his father and called his mother a female dog without an own opinion. It just broke my uncle's heart. He isn't the same man anymore. Edit. It is now 2:08 a.m. in Germany, and as much as I want to answer now all of your comments, I have to sleep soon. I will try to answer the most asked questions now, and will update this post again after work. Big promise. We are born and raised in West Germany. We are Kurdish of origin. My father and uncle lived an incredibly hard life back in Turkey with very strict parents. My uncle wanted his children to live a different life with an understanding father figure. It was his first child, and yes, he enabled it. But he was never a doormat. He just did what he thought was best for his son, because he never had it. Yes, he has mental problems. There's no diagnosis, as we can't force him to a psychologist. At this point, it could be everything from depression to narcissism. He never had a drug or alcohol problem as far as I know. As another Redditor here commented, some people just seem to be rotten. Edit 2. First of all, I want to thank you all for your comments, regardless if they were negative or positive. Thank you for your time and effort. Some of you warmed my heart, while others were a bit thoughtless or even hateful, racist. All of this happened about 2 years ago, and they repaired the damage. It took them a while, but it's handled. To everyone who offered help, I hope you get it 100 times back. As I mentioned in another comment before this post blew up, they reported him to the police for something else, but not for the destruction he caused. My uncle was just done with him at that point. He couldn't bring up the energy for another fight. We cleaned up the mess as much as we could. Family and friends fixed everything they could, and they paid again for the rest. His room is now a guest room. I don't know where his stuff went. There were so many concerned comments from you beautiful people that we need to be there for him, talk to him, show him that we love him, and offer him everything we can. And we do. Just imagine how much we love him when you already do without even knowing him. Unfortunately, there are some wounds we can't heal. He is not suicidal. He lives for his family. They all just need to learn to live with it, and all we can do is assure them that it's okay, and as, again, many of you said, the other 2 boys show how much uncle and aunt care for their children. Some of you can't understand why my uncle enabled him, how he thought his son would find motivation in cars and expensive holidays and stuff, that he needed his ass whooped and balls kicked. I get where that anger comes from, and this is the way my uncle and father were raised, with hitting and screaming, so it was never an option for them to treat their children that way. As I mentioned, they grew up very poor, and the things he did for his son, and enabled him that way, were the things he always wanted as a young man and could never afford. I think his generation/culture don't quite get the concept of mental issues. He imagines it like a person who fell into a pit and needs help to get out. This was too big for my uncle, as an understanding man and first-time father. This already got kind of long, but I promised and did my best. There are a few comments I saved yesterday night, and I want to answer. Just mentioning it, because some people are accusing me of karma whoring. Edit 3. I don't really think it's important, but I am his niece, guys. So, call me old school, but I definitely think that the lack of accountability that this young man had while he was growing up led to him becoming ultimately the monster that is being described here. And I get it. You know, you grow up poor and going through hard times, you want to create a better life for your children, but this is basically what happens when you don't impose some kind of structure and demand respect for not only your elders, your adults in your life, your family, but an appreciation for the things that you have in your life. When you don't cultivate that, that's when a child ultimately grows up to become a man and just flies off the handle like that. So, very unfortunate situation. But it is what it is. Story 3. I'm disappointed in my son because he's too much like me. He's a solid introvert who is afraid to ask for help and doesn't want to bother people, even with very legitimate requests. He's an expert procrastinator. I remember being that age and being so much like that. I'm not sure how I got through university, but I've been a successful engineer for 30 years, so I've still got a lot of hope for him. Also, both my kids vape and smoke. We've been anti-smokers for all of our adult lives, and I'm sad to see them choose to do something negative like that. They both, quote, want to quit, but it's a tough road. Story 4. My son is 25 and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder at around 15 years old, maybe younger. After he became too old and too big for me to manage his meds, he refused to take them, and his life has been a roller coaster of disasters ever since. Between prison time, juvie, and adult, bad decisions, suicidal ideation, drug use, fathering 2 children he doesn't see, same mom, and insisting on making up reasons to not speak to me, I'm done. Because honestly, there's nothing I can do for him. At this point, I'm just wanting to get a phone call on where I need to go to identify the body. Can't give up on your own kid, man. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Yeah, like, he's got bipolar disorder. It sounds like he's a handful, but instead of helping your child and being a support system, you're actually abandoning them and, in effect, enabling it and making it worse. That's sloppy. That's sloppy. Even when your kids grow up and, you're 25 years old or what have you, they're still your children, and until the day you leave this earth, the onus is on you to do everything you can to help and protect your kids, so shame on you. Story 5. Not a parent, but some current drama in my family has my parents pretty upset with my brother. He was having trouble with maintaining a job, so my dad got him hired as an assistant in his painting business. All he had to do was show up and do easy tasks, and he would have had the hours needed to pay for his car and living expenses. He did fine for a couple of months, but then my dad and mom went on holiday. He went home early without telling anyone one day. Then, next workday, he pulled a no-show. So my dad gets a call that he didn't show up and he won't answer his phone. Dad tried to call him and got no answer over several hours. Finally, my mom got through to his girlfriend, who said that my brother told her he had talked to Dad and he said he could have the day off. A complete lie. My brother is required to make regular payments to my parents for the car they helped him buy. As long as he keeps making payments, he has access to the car. If he misses a payment, he loses access to the car until he pays. He decided to get a delivery job, but that doesn't give enough hours to make his car payment, but still requires his car. So he says he got this job and he needs his car. So he is allowed to keep his car even though he's missing payments. Everyone just found out he doesn't have a delivery job, or a job at all. So he's lost his car and all references for a new job. His girlfriend hasn't been too impressed with the lying either. Edit. My brother is 20 years old and the youngest sibling of 8. The family dynamic in my story was simplified for easy reading. My family is actually split. Dad is actually my stepdad. Brother is my youngest stepbrother. I don't consider my step-siblings different from full siblings because my parents remarried when I was fairly young, so step-siblings, half-siblings, and bio-siblings don't have a notable difference. In total, I have 13 siblings, while some of us only have 8. He does get spoiled for being the youngest, and he also misses out on a lot because he is the youngest. I'm almost 10 years older than him, and I didn't even meet him until I was an adult. We're fairly close, though. Also, I'm not really taking any sides in this. I don't approve of my parents giving him handouts and babying him, but I also don't approve of some of his behavior that he has picked up from the crowd he hangs out with. They are both the idiots here, and, to an extent, the victims. I just sit off to the side and observe with popcorn. It's between them, and they will figure it out. Edit 2. Don't Google diagnose him, my parents, or me, please. A story I wrote on Reddit is not a fair assessment of him as a person. Indeed, he may be mentally ill, and he may have further problems. He may tear our family apart in the future, but that is absolutely none of your business. I'm only telling a story with the intent of casual discussion. I'm not here asking for advice. This issue barely involves me to begin with. Please be mindful of our privacy beyond what I have shared, and be aware that there are some things that I have chosen not to share, and things I have changed in order to simplify the story for easy reading, so I don't need to write a novel to explain everything. I left out the part where I got injured breaking into my mom's house. The party, the dog sitting, the cell phone delivery man, the story of my brother's first week at work, the car accident, and the Facebook Messenger scandal. You guys only see what I shared, and I didn't share it all, nor did I share it accurately. Okay, I was invested until that last edit there, edit number 2. What? So are you basically saying that you've made all of this up and you're replying to the story just to generate conversation? I don't really know what the OP was getting at with that. It's kind of weird. And then to patronize people for weighing in on a story that you shared? Shut up. Story 6. I'm in the middle of becoming estranged from my parents. They don't approve of how I'm raising my sons, and they can't even bring themselves to be around them. Our last attempt at a family vacation left my sisters yelling at my parents, and then storming off. Their complaint is that I don't have any boundaries for the kids. I do have boundaries. They just aren't the same as my dad when I was growing up. He was a hard ass with major anger issues. He threw me up a stairwell once when I left my boots behind at a park. Due to living in that household, I'm attempting to let my kids grow up knowing that making mistakes is part of life. You just have to learn from it. In any event, my children, quote, are monsters, and he can't get over that, so I'm about to cut him and my stepmom out of our lives. There's clearly some differing opinions on here, and some folks that may need to take some time out and work on themselves a bit. My goal is to raise kids who are respectful of others and their space, yet feel able to explore their world and make mistakes without fear. Story 7. My ex-husband was the son that my parents wanted their actual son to be. So they're pissed that my brother isn't like him, and they're pissed that I divorced him. Double whammy. Never mind that we just fundamentally did not work as a couple. They basically see it as me stealing away their chance at having the perfect child and son-in-law. Oh well. Story 8. I'm still not sure what my parents think of me. I was the promised child who got 99th percentile on aptitude tests in kindergarten, aced tests, memorized the presidents by age 4 at my dad's insistence, and ended up just blundering my way through school because what started as a bad habit of not doing homework eventually amalgamated into depression-driven apathy about education. I dropped out of college, and I've spent more of my time in therapy learning how to be a good person and be happy, which does make my mom happy, but I can feel my entire extended family's disappointed in me that I chose to work an 8-to-5 job and just live in an apartment with my cat. On the bright side, I'm more confident in my life choices than I ever have been, and wouldn't trade the positive mindset I've been working so hard on for any amount of work discipline. Story 9. My mom held getting a degree as one of the pinnacle achievements you can do because it was such a big deal to her going back to school and getting her degree in her 40s. As someone who works in IT, I dropped out about a year into school and haven't looked back. That was 10 years ago. I hid that I dropped out for many years before I actually told her. She was disappointed, but in my opinion, the astronomical cost of a degree does not have a good return on investment. And in IT, I've worked up to a very high salary level without one. Certifications, mentors, learning on the job, and at home. To me, a 4-year degree doesn't make much logical sense in a fast-moving field like this one. Just quickly weighing in, I actually agree with that. With the advent of the internet and social media, self-training has never been easier. You really don't need to go to school for these things. And quite honestly, there's a lot more demand for IT people than like a manual trade, like a mason or someone that, kind of has more of a blue collar sort of job. So it sucks, but that's just the world that we live in. So this person is absolutely right. Story 10. My son is 24 and, by some standards, a disappointment. He has a degree and no job. He struggles with motivation, and his sleep patterns are terrible. I don't think he has a plan to move forward with his life. Earlier in the year, My husband, his dad, was diagnosed with cancer. I thank God every day for my slacker son. He is so kind. Every time he makes dinner, because I know you must be tired, or comes and gives me a hug when I get home from work, makes it possible for me to keep going. Story 11. He is 24 years old and has a full-blown meth addiction that started in the last 6 months. He was fired from the job he got at 18 because he was high and manic. Sidebar, his manager was the one that introduced him to meth. Since then, he has dedicated his time to either finding or using meth. He has been arrested 3 times, spent 30 days in jail, and continues to use even though he's on probation. He is angry because we will not allow him to live with us while he is using. He is now homeless. He broke into our house and stole some of his father's sports memorabilia to support his habit. Some of it is not replaceable and very sentimental. He is a shell of the human we knew 6 months ago, both figurative and literally. He cannot hold a normal conversation and is constantly twitching. We have offered to get him help, but he is convinced that the drugs have set him free, and we are all living in a delusional world where we have to work and conform to society. It is killing us. On the other hand, our daughter, 23, just graduated college in June with a paralegal degree and has decided to go to law school. She is afraid to celebrate her success because she doesn't want to make him feel bad or upset him. But F him for taking that away from her. Story 12. I'm the adult child. My parents want me to be happy in my career. In high school, my goal is to join the military and become a combat medic. I graduated in 2007 and would have likely deployed to Afghanistan upon completion of training. My parents really didn't want me to join the military because, like all parents, they didn't want me to go to war, yet they still supported me. As it worked out, I never did join the military and became a welder. I hate my job, and it's caused me a lot of stress and instability over the last 10 years. Every day, I regret not following my dream. I know my dissatisfaction and regret with my job and life has disappointed my parents. However, I'm looking into a major career change, and they're fully supportive of that, in ways I can't begin to describe. Hopefully soon, I can make them happy for me by being happy in my career. First, thanks to everyone for the kind words and encouragement. It really means a lot to me. The attraction to the military for me, and now to the fire department, is the brotherhood, the camaraderie, and the ability to make a change in the world. Combine that with adventure and adrenaline, and I'd be a happy camper. As far as the deployments, risk of getting killed, PTSD, etc. are concerned, I'm more than aware of that. My 2 closest friends are ex-military, and I've had to be there for them during some of the worst times of their lives. PTSD is no joke for sure. I realize that it's also a serious concern for firefighters, LEOs, and EMS workers. I'm willing to accept the possibility, or likelihood, that I'll have PTSD someday. I consider it to be a burden that some must bear in order to provide safety and security for others. If I had joined the military and died overseas, or if I become a firefighter and die in the line of duty, I accept that. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends or for the non-religious, so that others may live. Such an outlook on life and work is ingrained in my heart and very soul. It probably explains why I am so unfulfilled being a welder. Regarding the rough and tumble personalities in firefighting, I totally get that. My dad was a full-time firefighter for 32 years, so I pretty much grew up in a fire hall. There's a big difference between firefighters and welders. Despite an often testosterone-laden rough guy personality, firefighters for the most part actually care about being decent people and helping those around them. Professionalism is also a required part of the job. Welders, by and large, couldn't give 2 craps about others and are only in it for the money, while professionalism doesn't even factor into their psyche. One of the things I remind myself to keep my priorities straight is that it's better to make a difference than to make a dollar. I'm very seriously considering a switch to HVAC and refrigeration. I have a contact at a local company who sounds very interested in hiring me, so we'll see how that goes. If firefighting doesn't pan out, having a more in-demand and stable trade will be a great fallback. You go chase your dream, brother. Don't let your parents try to dictate what you can and can't do with your career and your life. I love it. I love it. Someone that's willing to lay down their life and make a difference in other people's lives, you have to commend their bravery. So, beautiful. Story 13. I'm not. Life is hard, and she had dealt with a lot. She may not be fully independent yet, but she's working on it. I see her effort, and I'm proud of her for it. Maybe I could be disappointed she didn't do more stupid stuff when she was young, but I'm just glad she didn't end up like me. ETA. I'm not in a bad place now, but I'm sure as hell lucky to have gotten here and not ended up dead in a ditch somewhere. Story 14. Not a parent, but the child. My parents are disappointed in me because I basically failed out of college, in the UK, after demonstrating time and time again that I lack the direction, drive, foresight, and discipline to do well on my A-levels. My results came back today, EDDE, and they're seriously pissed off. We'll be having a long discussion on my plan going forwards, but I can tell they've lost their faith in me. I can't blame them. I don't have much faith in me either. I can elaborate if anyone cares, but I think I'll leave it here for now. Story 15. Ooh, good timing. I have to be semi-vague, but hopefully you get the gist. My middle daughter is 19, but we've had issues her entire life. I strongly suspect BPD narcissism. Currently, her infant child has been removed from her care by CPS for multiple reasons. Notably, her erratic behavior she showed and continues to show, and also heavy marijuana use. We suspect other drugs at play, but have zero proof. Instead of cooperating to get her child back, she has fought kicking and screaming every step of the way, making it much harder than necessary. At the same time, blaming her mother and vilifying her to the point that she has lied to CPS in an attempt to have them remove her 4-year-old sister from her mother's care. Calling old friends and family, giving them a hugely false story in an attempt to alienate her mother, and have zero friends and help. It's a giant mess she's created and refuses to take any blame or acknowledge that she's the issue at all. Story 16. Not mine, but my brother's. My nephews are mama's boys who are in their late 20s, early 30s, and still live at home. They went away to college and couldn't hack it for more than a year or two before moving back home. Any girl they date has to have mommy's approval, or they dump her. One girl was of the wrong religion, and their mom, my sister-in-law, wouldn't permit her in the house. Edit. I forgot to add that the eldest was a professional student. It took him 8 years to figure out what he wanted to do. But hey, it was all in Daddy's dime. He then went back for his master's, which he surprisingly completed in 2 years. It's in cybersecurity. He could land a 6-figure job anywhere in the world, but that would require moving out. Story 17. He's a deadbeat dad for his first daughter, which means I can't see my first granddaughter anymore. And he's been in and out of jail since the age of 11, is a multiple offense convicted felon as an adult who will steal from anyone, myself and his mother included, and has threatened to have most of his family members killed. He is known to carry stolen firearms and frequently uses his brother's name to try to avoid being caught. He's a drug addict, living with a drug-addicted girl, and they have now had 2 more children together, both of whom suffer from the effects of their parents' drug addictions. Fetal drug syndrome. Story 18. My aunt and I are very close. I'm like her pseudo-daughter after my mom and I became distant. Anti-vax mom. I can answer for her and her biological children. Her daughter is 21, lives with a bunch of druggies, and sells pot out of their rented home. The police regularly show up due to the persistent smoke clouds surrounding the house. She works a full-time job at some meat processing facility, but she's got no drive and doesn't really know how money works. She's got her car impounded after she got arrested for possession. The impound lot sold her car after she couldn't pay. My aunt paid for a brand new car and she's supposed to be paying her back every week, but my aunt has never seen a cent. She owes her $27,000 in car payments, and that is not including bail money, at least 50 grand. My aunt is an electrical engineer and makes decent money, but she will be in debt for the rest of her life because of her daughter's mistakes. I'm a welder, and I've been secretly saving 50% of my paycheck every month to be able to pay off her debts for her. I have so much hope that her daughter will come around. Edit. Hey y'all, I really appreciate the kind words. My aunt is enabling her by paying her debts. That much is evident to all of us. I do not care that I'm paying her debts, so much as I'm paying my aunt back for everything she's done for me. Erasing or diminishing my aunt's debt would mean the world to her, and I want to be able to give her that. Her daughter is currently not living with my aunt, and I understand I came across that way in my words, and I'm sorry. On that previous note, I've talked to my aunt about cutting her off entirely, and she's seriously conflicted. On one hand, that's her daughter. On the other hand, she's a deadbeat. It's hard, but I won't pretend to understand the emotional stress she's under. The only thing I can do is plant that seed of cutting her off and watch it either grow or wither. Story 19. The person I'm talking about is my ex-boyfriend's mom. I bet she's more disappointed in her son than imaginable. Let me start by saying that the lady has 3 kids, 2 daughters and 1 son. The 2 daughters are completely normal, went through school, pursuing careers, on track with their lives, and then here comes the son. Their father passed away when they were all teenagers, so the mother had to raise 3 kids on her own. Unlike the 2 daughters, who are grateful for their mother's contribution, this son of hers does not appreciate her at all and blames their father's death on her. Died of disease, completely not her fault. He kept saying that she is evil, while he is 27, does not have a job, and lives in one of her houses free of charge. She buys all of his groceries and appliances, pays for all the bills, and drives 3 hours to visit him 2 to 3 times a month to see if he's doing well. Instead of being grateful, this son of hers goes around telling everyone his mom is evil and how she is the cause of why he's an alcoholic with a convicted DUI, crashed the car she gave him, and she had to pay for lawyer in the case, while he abuses substances and why he dropped out of high school. Now, is she a perfect person? No. Did she collude with her son to con $300 from me? Yes. Did she text me long messages every day that she wanted me to tell her son, since he ignores everything she sends? Yes. Do I like her? No. But imagine being mother to this ungrateful 27-year-old, never-ending nightmare whose bills you probably have to pay till you pass away. This is what scares me about having kids. You can't break up with or divorce them. You can't leave them, and they probably won't die before you die. If there's anything that we're learning from these videos, it's that you have to impose your will on your children when they are young. If you wait until they're grown to try to crack down and start implementing rules, it's too late. It's too late. You've lost them. Story 20. Not a parent, but I had a rough time after graduating college, and I felt like the world should have been disappointed with me. My mom was great, so she wasn't, but I couldn't find a decent paying job I liked. Went from customer service to retail plant sales to landscaping to park ranger to retail UPS store, all the while working online as a tutor. My parents still had to help me financially at times because I was too depressed to work full-time and just did part-time. Terrible period in my life. My girlfriend left me because the depression was too much for her. My brother in and out of mental health institutions, but I kept trying. I kept applying for different jobs. Finally, I got an interview for a teaching position because of my tutoring experience. I now teach at a school that serves underserved youth, and sometimes I leave with literal tears of joy in my eyes because I love my job. Keep trying, guys. Keep sending out applications. Get creative. You can do it. P.S. My degree is in economics, and I teach middle school science. Story 21. You guys ever heard of Rich Baumhammer's? He went on a spree killing in Pittsburgh in 2000, targeting Jews and immigrants. Ironically, he was a lawyer who specialized in cases of fighting illegal immigration. His parents would come into the store I worked about once a week. They were both disturbingly quiet people, very soft-spoken, and they both always looked down at the ground when they would speak with anyone. I can't imagine what it's like to be Richard's parents. I feel terrible that their child is a psychopath, and it's public knowledge. Edit. When I said fighting illegal immigration, I meant he worked for immigrants, getting them citizenship. The ironic part is he went on a racism-fueled killing spree, murdering the people who he'd fight for in court. Story 22. I want to give a reverse perspective. I have a high school-age boy, one of 3 kids, who sometimes jokes that he's disappointing us and that he's kind of a loser. And I feel so awful when he says things like that. If you feel like that, I want you to know that for the overwhelming majority of you, your parents love you and care about you and are not disappointed in you at all. They just want you to see all the goodness and possibilities in yourself that they see, so that you can be the happiest version of yourself that you can be. You don't need to be some kind of super achiever. You just need to find something or things that sparks some kind of joy for you. Totally agree with this take, and I think that this is honestly why a lot of children give up, is because they just assume that their parents or people that they look up to are disappointed in them. But anyone in your life that's worth having in your life just wants to see you happy, wants to see you succeed. So don't be afraid of hard work. I think that's the main hang up here, is that a lot of people expect these opportunities to just fall into their lap. I mean, you got to work for it, right? If it was easy, everyone would be able to do it. Everybody would be living out their dreams. So chase your dreams and just know that your parents, more likely than not, are going to support you, even if they don't outwardly say it. Story 23. I feel all you guys' pain. My son is 32. He's just undermotivated, no matter how hard I try, but I know there's a fine line between motivating and being so hard on him he goes the exact opposite way I hope he will. I'm a widow and we live together. Always have. He is underemployed and loves the video games. Sadly, the apple didn't fall too far from the lazy tree. I've had a good job for 30 years and I hope he can find a away. He has finally started to feel the pinch of one of my main income and how it limits our lives. He is trying, and I just have to support him and give him positive reinforcement until he gets to a good place. Neither of us dates and prefer to stay home and partake in relaxation, but I would maybe like to have a grandbaby one day. But then some days, figure why bring a kid into this world? Good luck to us all. Story 24. After Trump, quote, won, my eldest lost it and abandoned his wife to run off with an adult content star and live in the Ukraine. He barely communicates with anyone except his grandmother on his dad's side. He totally erased himself from all our lives. My other two are sweet, normal, fine young humans, and there's no insanity in either of our family histories. Prior to his, he had the same job for over a decade, creating signage for ambulance and rescue vehicles. He does have a history of recreational drug use, but to my knowledge, there was never an addiction issue, and it didn't F up his brain chemistry or anything. He always just seemed normal when hanging out. It was just like he snapped. There's a part of me that's sad at the loss of him, and resentful, but I'm more angry at his dismissing his little brother and sister. It's like they never even had a big brother now. Story 25. Well, you asked. I have a 15-year-old transgender daughter named Temmie. She came out 2 years ago. She was born a male, Aiden, and my ex-wife and I always suspected something was different about her. Honestly, we thought she was gay. She was so incredibly nervous to tell me that she insisted it be in public with her mother, brother, and stepdad. Her trepidation made sense, considering I'm a 6'4", 240-pound U.S. Army infantry vet who was raised in a religious household. Naturally, her and her mother were concerned I'd be less than receptive, so we met at an Applebee's on a Wednesday afternoon at noon. Can't get much more public than that. She read me a letter stating how she always felt different and never truly felt she was who she was meant to be. The whole time, I'm in my head like, gay, great, that's easy. Because contrary to my religious upbringing, my mother and grandmother raised me to respect and love everyone, no matter what they look like or who they like. Direct quote from Graham. So her being gay was manageable in my head. As her letter drew to a close, Daddy, I'm transgender. I feel I was meant to be a girl, but I was put in a boy's body. If any of you are still reading this, you're most definitely wondering where the disappointment comes in. I will try to verbalize it as best I can, and hope y'all don't viscerate me for it. Initially, I was overcome with a wave of WTF? Trans? One of those freaks? How the hell am I going to deal with this? After flagging down a waiter and taking a shot and downing a beer, I came to my senses and remembered what my ma and Graham taught me, no matter what they look like or who they like. I explained to her that first and foremost, no matter what she would ever go through, I would always be there. No matter what. And I meant it. As long as she is happy, healthy, and not harming herself or anyone else, I will always support my children. So, I read up. I educated myself. I tried to talk to my VA therapist about transgenderism, but the VA is ages behind on LGBTQ stuff. But I bought books and consistently referred to her in the correct gender pronouns. I bought her a whole new wardrobe and redecorated her room. I cut off my own father, who is a deacon at his Baptist church, because he refused to assimilate. Fast forward to now. 2 years after she came out, she's attempted self-unalive twice, ran away from home once, and bounced around schools. I've signed off on the hormone treatments and puberty blockers. I've allowed her to change her name, which is tattooed on me, by the way. Essentially, I have been as 100% lovingly and genuinely supportive as I can be. Here's where the disappointment lies. No matter what I do, no matter how accepting and loving I am, she always wants more. First, it was the name change. Then she wanted to take puberty blockers. Then the hormones. I agreed to all and hardly gave any resistance. I suppose I'm disappointed that she does not know how to be happy in her own skin. Boy or girl. I love you, Temmie. Always have and always will. Story 26. My parents are disappointed in me because my life and our lives together didn't end up like a Hollywood film. I was signed up for football without asking, soccer, baseball, etc. They did everything that was seen in movies and expected it to play out like that. They thought I was extremely popular and well-liked in high school and middle school. I was not. I was followed home and pelted with BBs and paintballs. When the kids started shooting paintballs at my father's house, my father kept telling me that, quote, my friends are shooting stuff at the house, and those guys are jealous that, insert girl here, likes you. We had to get a lawyer to go to each kid's house and put an end to it. They expected me to have a job making $100K a year after college. I was a history teacher. They were shocked and surprised when I made nowhere near that amount and told me it was my fault. None of this stuff I wouldn't give a crap about, but when you hear your mother say, "It wasn't supposed to be like this, it's supposed to be like the movies," you just can't help but feel sorry for her. It's like the weeaboo of yesterday. College was awful because they expected me to want to do something amazing. An actor, a lawyer, a doctor, anything that'll make you a crapload of money. I wanted the basic 9 to 5 and routine. Stability, the goddamn salaryman payment plan. Apparently everyone had this idea, and I was told I was soulless, depressing, and just boring as a person. I am now going through with that plan at 30. After quitting teaching, I'm applying to a high position at my job, getting the credentials and moving up. I just wish I did it when I was younger and didn't dick around in school so much. I somehow managed to avoid student debt, so there's that. Also, they beat me when things didn't go their way, and I'm kinda salty about it. Okay, so that story took a turn that I wasn't expecting during those last couple of lines. I thought that he was going to stay steadfast in his convictions to do what he wanted to do and not what his parents wanted to do, and now all of a sudden he's 30 and doing what his parents wanted him to do, and then just kind of that throw-in line of him getting beaten at the end. What? Story 27. They are terrible with money. They smoke too much weed. My son is working a job that has no growth potential, and he's a private contractor, so he gets hosed on taxes. He's trying to build a business that has so far only cost him money, and it's just never going to go anywhere, but I bite my tongue and it's killing me. I gently suggest trade schools or other jobs that include healthcare, but he isn't listening. My daughter works a decent job, but mostly lives for hanging out. She goes to bed most nights after 2 a.m. and has to be at work by 9 a.m. I'm sure it shows in her performance. She also dates too much. I'd like her to learn how to be comfortable in her own company. They are both kind and decent human beings. They don't have kids, so I think they somewhat understand that they are not fully responsible adults yet. But I wish they would just step it up. I really love them and just want to feel like they would be okay if anything ever happened to me. Story 28. My 19-year-old daughter failed in her first semester of college. Not a big deal. Sometimes freshmen get overwhelmed and don't do so hot in their classes. My daughter, however, just decided to not show up to the classes that weren't theater related. So she failed math and English, which she could have aced. Now, had she owned up to this, there would have been little issue. Lesson learned, do better on probation, and pass the classes next semester. What she did do was just not register for classes for the next semester and try her luck at living in the dorms. Illegally. Somehow it took the college 3 months to catch up with her. She finally fessed up in March. By that time, she had been trespassing at the college for those 3 months. We had to beg the college to not throw her into prison. We were literally on the phone with college officials for an hour, begging them to just let her come home. She screwed up, but she's learned her lesson. Luckily, if you can call it that, her grandmother rushed to her rescue and paid off her outstanding balance on her bill. $6,000 for the 3 months she lived on campus, boarding and food card. Her grandmother, my mom, then proceeded to tell my daughter she never had to return to us. We were evil people, and she would, quote, protect her from the likes of us. My daughter, who used to call me every night and called me anytime she had problems, cut all ties with us because facing her responsibilities wasn't a requirement anymore. We tried calling her, tried telling her we weren't angry and to just come home. Nothing doing. We would have been angry, but we would have worked it out. Instead, we became the bad guys in her fairy tale, and for the past 5 months, she's gone on shopping sprees, goofed off, and had the time of her life. I've seen her twice since it all happened. Both times, she treated me like an evil monster. Both times, I went home in tears, despising my mother more and more. My daughter is going back to school tomorrow like nothing ever happened. My female dog of a mom is paying for it. You might be thinking, but she's footing the bill. The problem with that is my oldest daughter has worked her ass off to get her degree, and my mom refused to help her because she's bisexual. She's doing this to get back at her for embarrassing her in front of her church. I refused to let the younger daughter get help from her because of this in the past. So my younger daughter also stabbed her older sister in the back by doing this. I'm so very disappointed in the entitled brat my daughter has become. And if I ever see my female dog of a mother again, I'll wring her fat neck right in front of all those Christians in her church. Story 29. Oi, of course you ask now. Mainly, it's that I don't think she's living up to her potential, and she's letting fear keep her from doing things. Granted, she watched her old man live that way for most of her life, so that apple didn't fall far from the tree. She's always been a little tightly wound, not unlike me, and she's still getting over the horrific car accident we were in last year. I was driving, she was the passenger. Other driver was 1000% at fault. So she's had a lot of knocks against her. But she's a brilliant kid. I know if she could get OST herself, she'd absolutely love college and find something meaningful. And I'm also not going to force her into school when she had a rough time in high school, just like her old man. In the end, I just want her to be happy and follow her dreams, which I didn't do at her age. I tried to be the good boy, and 20 years later, I realized how effed up that made everything, which I'm now trying to undo. Then again, she's only 20, so there's a lot of living left for her to do. She will amaze me yet, I have no doubt. Story 30. Not my kid, but my 23-year-old brother still lives at home. No job and not going to school. He treats women like crap, including me, my sister, and my mom. He was the fourth and last kid way after us, so my mom spoiled him like crazy and never made him do a damn thing. She's always saying that she has no idea how he's like this. She's a hard worker. I tell her that maybe it's because he's never actually had to do anything, so nothing motivates him. I've told her to kick him out so many times, and she's too scared of where he'll go. He may live with her forever, and her poor stress levels are just building and building. I have vowed numerous times to my husband that our son will never be like my brother. It's so sad to say that. Story 31. My dad is disappointed in me because I'm going to the cheapest college around for an accounting degree instead of going to art school. Yes, you read that right. My dad believes my art skills are very talented and that I'd make more money in design than owning a store like I really want to do. But I'm really against that because I don't want to turn a hobby and something that relaxes me into something that's basically life or death if I don't get paid, and which doesn't have a big payout. I also applied to an art college before, and they reviewed my portfolio and told me it was terrible, and yet he still pushes me for it. I'm proud of his support, but it drives me nuts. Story 32. My dad is, quote, frustrated with me. I'm almost 35, never married, no kids. My dad asked if I was a lesbian because you're pretty but not married and you wear a lot of plaid flannel. I looked at him and said, no, Dad, I'm not a lesbian. But you're not married and you're wearing plaid flannel at the moment, so does that mean you're a lesbian? He got all red. For the record, I have an amazing boyfriend and would like to get married in the whole shebang, but Dad decided when he was 60 to leave my mom, join the army, ship out, bought a red convertible Corvette, married a younger woman, we refer to her as Voldemort, and cut ties with much of the family. I'm just really picky and taking my time, so hopefully I only have one marriage. Okay, this girl's funny. That was a hilarious burn of your father, just calling him out because it's like you're not married and you're wearing flannel, like that's just the calling card of all lesbians in the world. And then referring to the younger sister as Voldemort, yeah, she's sassy. I like it. Story 33. I'm friends with a family of whom I was good childhood friends with the son, and his mother and mine go back 40 years. He died in May of a drug cocktail: heroin, crack, meth, weed, alcohol, and he was becoming a massive mess. At the funeral, his mom pulled me aside and started crying so hard. Her disappointment during the last decade of his life was evident, and at times she was scared of him too. But despite being able to come up for air for the first time in years, she had lost a son, and she would put herself through another decade of disappointment and misery if it meant she could have him back. At the end of the day, parents can feel like their kid failed, but they're still their child. Even if they die, a parent will always feel somewhat accountable for how their children turn out. Story 34. Not a parent, but my sister is such a toxic person. Recent drug addict who is slowly becoming an alcoholic. 39 years old and 2 kids. No car and living with my parents. I also live there, so 6 people total living in this house. She doesn't have a car, so my dad lets her use his to take care of things. When she asks and he says no, she has a complete 7-year-old-like meltdown. Starts dropping F-bombs left and right, and is just so damn disrespectful. She swore at her 3-year-old daughter the other day to, quote, get the F out of my room. Her and myself don't have a civil relationship. Every time we exchange words, it turns into a loud exchange of words and arguing. We physically fought in my kitchen 2 years ago while she was on drugs and haven't had any sort of relationship since. She constantly paints herself as a victim whenever you say anything to her. She gets very defensive and has justifications for everything she does. Not an ounce of accountability in her body. My dad has tried kicking her out, but my mom brings her back. My mom won't do anything to get rid of her because she doesn't want any drama going on, but openly complains about her as well. I bite my tongue so much on things that I've bitten it off several times. I know anything I say will practically end up in a brawl, and I want to be a positive role model for my nieces that live in the house. My sister goes to therapy for who knows what, but I'm trying to set up something with a counselor so this sister, my other sister who's fed up with all of this, and myself can sit down and try to hash some of this out. I honestly don't know what to do anymore besides moving out myself, but I help out my parents in all sorts of ways. That it would get more difficult for them, especially with my sister still living there. Story 35. Mom here. Very proud of my two sons. They overcame their parents' horrible marriage, their father's mental illness, learning disabilities, a crappy education system, and money being tight too often. They are both gainfully employed and hard workers. The oldest is married and has 2 children. He is a better husband and father than his father ever thought about being. His brother isn't married, but is a very thoughtful young man. Sometimes they get along like oil and water, but at the end of the day, they can count on each other. There were times I thought they would never know anything but strife. Sad face. Story 36. Obligatory not me, but my stepdad. His only son had a really rough upbringing, out of his dad's control. Son's mother insisted on full custody around age 4. Dad didn't have the means to fight for it. Dad relinquished custody, mom got in a relationship, new man took to son like his own, established a great relationship until mom got pregnant and delivered son of their own. New man demanded that it was now he or son in mom's life. Mom shipped son across the country to live with dad at age 10. Dad and son had barely had a chance to know each other at that point. They bonded quickly, but son was always left with need for acceptance. Early in teen years, son starts getting in trouble. Usual kid needing acceptance stuff. Failing grades, fights, vandalism. Son is put in remedial. Gets better. At this point, my mom and stepdad have gotten together. Middle teen years. Remedial puts son in wrong crowd, gets into minor suburban gang bullcrap, minor drugs, fights, goes to juvie. Son goes through system and counseling, improves, does well, lands first job, stays straight for a while. Son is given more freedoms, suddenly steals and sells a bunch of family stuff and runs off. Son is tracked down after a week or so, makes good with everyone, back in counseling. A few weeks later, son lands his first true juvie stint. 90 days for a fight. Comes out better on the other side. Has a great heart and wants to do good but can't stop effing up. Son shows up to his dad, my mom's, wedding day with 2 black eyes. Moves out shortly after. For a year or so, wavers in and out of our house for a few months at a time until one day, state marshals show up at 4 a.m., rip up the house looking for him, offer me, 20-year-old, a substantial reward for information. I have none. Stepdad tells me afterward that if I hear anything, he encourages me to take the money. I need it, and son will do best in jail. 2 years later, mom and stepdad move across country. All the kids stay there. Son moves in with girlfriend. Son is doing well. Son is in school. Hasn't been arrested for a while. Is excited about career prospects. Suddenly, son is in real jail for fighting. 60 days. While he's in jail, son's girlfriend gets addicted to heroin. Son and I were both 23 at this time. A full 10 years of this crap from son. Son and dad still stay in relative touch, but dad is across the country, and son is in and out of heroin houses. 4 years later, I get an 8 a.m. phone call. Please call me back. It's important. I knew. I don't know why or how, but I knew. Son died of a heroin overdose. Nothing will ever resonate with me like him squeezing me the first time we were alone together. Stepdad and I had our spats, but he's a good guy. Stepdad breaks down, cries into my shoulder. You're the only son I have left. I know stepdad doesn't want to say it, but son failed him. He doesn't want to be disappointed in his dead son, but he is. Story 37. 21-year-old son moved back home after flunking 1 year of college. Got a full-time job within a week, license and car in the next 5 months, and is going back to a different college in the spring on his own dime. Doesn't screw around, do drugs, disrespect me or his sister, though his present giving skills suck. LOL. I'm disappointed that his second choice of college is so far away. I'm going to miss him. Story 38. Disappointed does not even begin to cover it. I feel like I've lost my daughter this year. She's been dating a guy for about 3 years, off and on. Well, early this year they broke up. She started seeing someone new and fell head over heels for him. And my wife and I quickly fell in love with him too. Things were going great. Then the ex started whispering in her ear again. Next thing you know, she feels like God is telling her something is wrong. The ex likes to use religion to manipulate her. Before you know it, her and the new guy break up. Me, my wife, and the new guy are all devastated. She goes back to the manipulative little dick. All her friends stop hanging out with her because none of them can stand dick either. It seems she becomes super religious when she's with him. I hate that I can't talk to her and feel like I've lost her because of this relationship she's addicted to, where she is constantly mistreated and made to feel like the bad guy. TLDR. I hate that I can't talk to her and feel like I've lost her because of this relationship she's addicted to, where she's constantly mistreated and made to feel like the bad guy and won't listen to anybody about. Story 39. Daughter, 56. Sleeps all day, is up all night making noise and messes, doesn't clean up after herself, won't get a job, doesn't pay for her own food, doesn't contribute to the household financially at all, ignores even the simplest requests. But when she wants something, good lord, you better give it to her or she won't leave you alone. Her hair is all over the apartment and she doesn't do anything about it. Doesn't wear clothing, even when people are over. Farts all the time with absolutely room-clearing smells. Super picky about her food. Craps in a box that I have to clean up. Sometimes she even walks around with leftover crap on her ass and just sits in the bed or the couch, leaving little crusty kisses as we call them. It's disgraceful and disgusting. Get a job, cat. Yeah, there's no way that this is real. I'm calling BS. To have a 56-year-old woman that just walks around the house naked with crap on her butt and sits on the couch. A, that's gross, and B, like, who would be okay with that and just enable it without kicking her out? Yeah, that isn't real. That never happened. Story 40. My parents have made it clear I'm a disappointment. Crap, I'm disowned. When my dad got me back from foster care, I had a drug habit. It spiraled out of control and had a 10-year addiction. I'm 4 years sober, married, a mom myself to a toddler monster, and a good person, but they still don't want anything to do with me. Last contact I had was my birthday. My dad lashed out how I'm not where I should be. My mom is a drug addict herself, who's off who knows where. Parents with disappointing kids, please don't give up on them. A lot of times, we eventually pull our head out of our ass. Just don't give up on your kids. We still need our parents, even in our 20s. Story 41. Disappointed mostly how things turned out in general. I joined the military out of high school to support my family. Well, it is also a primary reason I also lost my family 8 years later. So summers I would try to build on our relationship and teach my kids life lessons. I thought I was doing good, but now I feel like it was a waste. My 21-year-old works a factory job making decent money, but no real ambition. Living with grandparents, my parents, for 2 years now. Has no real idea how to adult. Needs help or guidance constantly. My 18-year-old just graduated had a plan, but ended up working at Starbucks, still living with mom. My 17-year-old has a 1-year-old baby and at least is still in school, but doesn't know what she will do after school. I have to contact them. They never just text or call me. I send them gifts for holidays and birthdays, but I never receive anything. Not that I need to receive anything, but at least a text would be nice. I've joined the service to support my family, and I can't even get a text or call from them. It sucks that they had to endure a split family childhood, but that is better than a toxic environment. Story 42. I came here hoping for some clues that might help me figure out why my parents are so disappointed in me, one of their 2 adult children. I'm just shy of 33, and am kind of a floater. I'm working on my PhD in linguistics right now, but have had a pretty rocky, aimless road throughout adulthood so far. I still don't even have a clear plan for after I finish my doctorate. My younger sister, who just turned 30, is a geneticist with a solid career and an impressive resume under her belt, even at such a young age. A few years ago, I was having lunch with my mom and my sister. My sister had just done something commendable. I don't even know what it was, and my mom gave her a huge hug and said, "I'm so proud of you." I asked, semi-jokingly, if my mom was proud of me as well. She looked at me, dead serious, and said, "I love you, but I worry about your future." Then she went right back to praising my sister. That was the single most devastating thing I've ever heard from either of my parents. I don't know if my mom remembers it, and I'll certainly never tell her what a dent it left in me, but that was the comment that confirmed all my suspicions that my parents are disappointed in me. Story 43. 19-year-old stepdaughter is dating an older man, 32, who is paying child support, works as a waiter for tips to avoid loss of money, recovering alcoholic, revoked driver's license due to DUIs, and near homeless, shares rent with recovering drug addict friends, but sometimes isn't allowed to sleep at their place, so he sleeps in a hammock in a park. She has caused repeated dramas in our house, proclaiming her love for him and demanding that we just don't understand. She is an honor student with a wealth of extracurricular activities and in a privileged situation to exceed in college without bills. She did not suffer from a lack of love or attention in our house. We never missed a band or color guard performance, and I was always the loudest voice in the audience cheering her on. She clearly has some paternal issues with her biological father, but no matter how I say it or explain the situation, she prefers to spend her life with him and is rarely home. It breaks my heart that she doesn't find a healthier situation for herself. Story 44. My daughter has 2 wonderful little boys. She is loving, but so self-absorbed it is maddening. She doesn't get that her priority needs to be these kids. Separated from her husband, she seems to be more interested in her boyfriend, who is married. She is naive as the day day is long and will let people walk all over her, to the detriment of her kids. I let her come live at my house rent-free so that I know the boys are not around her crappy friends and she spends more time at work than around her kids. I have to drag her into getting the kids' homework done. Her decision process goes like this. What is the worst of my opinions? That's what I'll do. For example, the little one has a heart condition and needs open heart surgery every few years. The last time she gave me a sob story that she would have to miss work for weeks, so I did a fundraiser to pay their bills while she couldn't work. Unbeknownst to me, she was putting money away for a boob job. So the same week I present them with the money, she has surgery. I am mortified and hope all the people who donated never find out. I paid their bills with the money, but it looks so crappy. I have already decided that when my wife and I pass, whatever portion of money we are able to leave her will go in trust for her boys. She won't get a dime. I could write an encyclopedia of all the dumb stuff she does. I feel like a failure. My other kids are both awesome parents and stand-up humans, but if I let up for a minute, I'm afraid of what will happen to these little boys. Story 45. My mom had this stupid fantasy that I was going to be a famous rock star. I was a slightly above average guitar player, but nothing special. I moved away to California when I was 16, and my rock star fantasies kind of dwindled with the harsh reality. I did end up making a living in music, but I wasn't in an original band or anything. I rarely talked to her, but the last time I did, she expressed her disappointment in me for not achieving the impossible feat of becoming famous, as if I could just will it. I'm 50 years old and almost a millionaire business owner, and she is still mad that I wasn't on MTV. She's a loony bird. Story 46. I disowned my stepson last week. He came into my life at 12. A few months short of turning 13. He turned 23 a couple of months ago. It's been 10 years of hell. I missed my children. Divorce sucks, and I didn't see them enough, and really looked forward to him being my son. I knew from the moment he moved in that he was lying to me about virtually everything. No matter how big or small, he would deflect, outright lie. He started getting bad grades in school, claiming, quote, I don't want to be a nerd. We worked with him. He'd get straight A's for 6 weeks, then purposely start failing again. Then he got involved with less desirable elements. Older than him as well. He started fighting. A lot. Became his group's enforcer. At 15, he got locked up in a juvenile detention center with a boot camp-like program for 6 weeks. Model citizen, perfect grades, respectful. The instructors told us they had no idea why he was even there. Came home 3 days before his 16th birthday. Perfect gentleman. On his birthday, he went out with friends and disappeared for days. Came back, had obviously been using something, got in a fight with his mother, left, came back, kicked in the back door, and stole some electronics. We called the cops and they had him in 30 minutes, on his way to the pawn shop. In court the next day, he was rude and belligerent. Did 6 months in real juvie this time. Came home after Christmas. Back to school, back to fighting. Finally got jumped by 3 guys with brass knuckles that put him in the hospital. Finally quit fighting. Dropped out of high school at 17. Got married a few months later. My wife is an idiot for supporting it. Gets her pregnant. They split up a few months in. Cue the cycle of him arguing with his mother, being hateful and nasty to her, and leaving. Weeks or months go by. He comes back. Over the course of the last 6 years, there have been girlfriends living with us because my wife cannot say no to her little boy. He won't hold a job. Best streak of working is about 2 months. Meanwhile, he's been locked up multiple times for drugs, being in a burglary ring, domestic violence, driving without a license, failure to pay child support. Did I mention there are 2 kids by different mothers now? The latest is a return of one of the psycho girlfriends that I had explicitly banned from our property. That crazy. Turns out, a few weeks back, they informed she's pregnant. At the same time, I warn her that the more she lets them hang out while I'm away, the better the chance that something bad happens. It did. He had one of his flare-ups one evening late. I'm out of town. He's stone cold sober. Gets pissed off at nothing, really. I reviewed the security footage. Proceeds to get into an argument with his mother, screaming in the front yard. It moves over by the garage. Grabbed her and threw her down on the driveway. Landed on the corner of the concrete on her tailbone. Couldn't get up. Spent most of the night in the hospital. I drove in from 2 hours away in the middle of the night. She's okay, but it could have been much worse. This is one more thing in a long string of events that culminated in physical violence for the first time. I didn't mince words. Never again. Disowned. She is agreed. Somehow, I don't think it will last, and that makes me sad. I've been clear, though. From here out, she can pick one of us. Him or me. I completely agree with this poster's stance and point of view. Stepson clearly has issues with bipolar anger, and he needs help. He needs help, and if he won't take help, then he needs to be in jail. The physical violence, the domestic beatdown that he put on his mother, nah, we can't be having that. Story 47. Not the parent, but the grandchild, who has witnessed all of my mother's spectacular downfall. She got pregnant in college by an abusive criminal, dropped out, and moved back home to have me. Somehow managed to get her act together while being a single parent. Finished school with a degree in the medical field and continued to wait tables for a living. Dated numerous violent men, and every time the relationship got serious, we'd end up living together. So when it then dramatically fell apart, we'd be left running back to my grandparents. Then she met a new man and got simultaneously pregnant and addicted to hard drugs. My baby brother was taken away numerous times by CPS, and as a teenager, I asked if I could just come stay at my grandparents' house indefinitely, so they ended up raising me. More disappointments. Several more years of working parenting programs, rehab programs, just long enough to keep custody of my little brother, until some things culminated and my grandparents sued for custody and got a restraining order. Mom chose drugs and her last ex-con over her kids, and effed off to Vegas for 2 years. Rarely called, and we didn't know if she was alive for a good chunk of it. Grandparents won custody and now have had to raise both of her children and try to undo the damage that living in a violent, unstable environment has done to us. All of their other children are happy and successful, in healthy relationships with beautiful children and partners. They all had the same experiences growing up. They're just always that one black sheep. I think my grandparents are most disappointed in my mother for seeing how much pain she has caused myself and my little brother, and they've done their absolute best to step in wherever we needed them. I love them lots. Story 48. My parents, had they Reddit accounts, would tell you I'm a failure for very different reasons. My father, because I took him at his word when he disowned me. I left the first second I could and never looked back. He got in touch years later because he expected me to move back home and support/take care of him after more than a decade of NC. F that and F him. My mother, because I married a man who doesn't want children and won't, quote, trick him into it for his own good. Apparently, I hate her so much I'm murdering her bloodline. Story 49. My parents are dead, but I'm very proud to have disappointed my father's memory by not being straight, not having children, and being the only member of our large family that didn't keep quiet about him abusing all of us. It burned a lot of bridges, but also some of my elder siblings who had it even worse have finally felt free to talk about and work through their crap, so it's worth every minute. My mother genuinely believed in and took pride in her children every day. Some of us screwed up impressively, but she was still there to calmly call you on your crap and offer a sympathetic ear at the same time. Everyone should have at least one person like that in their life. Story 50. My oldest daughter followed a very religious path, which has isolated and ostracized her from my side of the family. She is still very close to her mom's side of the family, because they are all religious. If you are not part of her church group or functions, you are not on her radar. The church group has taught her that God's work is what matters above all. And if you are not part of that work, then you don't matter. She would never say any of this outright, but her actions speak louder than words. By all outward appearances, she is a very nice and upbeat person, but she is boxed into an echo chamber that has made her incredibly naive and judgmental. It breaks my heart. Story 51. Not disappointed in him, but disappointed for him. There's a very nasty streak of mental health issues in my family. He's been hit with a crapload from it. Lots better now, but he does have borderline personality disorder, which is hell on earth for all of us. I was a dad at his age, and he constantly compares to me the fact that I could stand on my own 2 feet and raise a family. I doubt he will ever be able to. His mood swings are too much. They're horrendous. Story 52. Not disappointed, but terrified for his future. 22-year-old son never leaves his room except for school, 2 days a week, which we pay for fully. No job and has never tried. I give him a small amount for chores, and he gets a little more from his dad helping at a project. But he puts as little effort as possible into everything, spends every last cent on video games. He flunked out of his major because, by all appearances, he never studied. No girlfriend, no friends, at least none he sees in real life. He is hostile, abrasive, and yells even when we speak to him nicely. He is obsessively picky about food and will only eat the same 3 to 4 foods daily. He obviously has mental health or cognitive issues, ASD, ADD, OCD, but absolutely refuses to acknowledge or address it. If I were well off, I'd just say, hey, I've got a grumpy roommate for the rest of my life. But we're not well off, and I lie awake at night terrified what will become of him when we are gone or truly broke. I see a lot of similar stories in this thread of young adults who are basically shut-ins. Any advice? What do I do? Story 53. He has zero interest in working or going to school. He's been couch surfing for years. He doesn't really help with chores where he stays, gets way too involved in 4chan and 8chan bullcrap, and has completely unrealistic ideas of how he's going to succeed in life. He constantly tries to guilt trip with announcements that he's just going to off himself. I had to kick him out because you can't live here as an adult and not contribute, and I'm the a-hole. It sucks because I love him dearly, and he could be a fantastic person. He can be kind, funny, and generous, but he's just a selfish a-hole who's been living with losers since he graduated high school. Story 54. I'm not a parent, but I think my parents are probably pretty disappointed in me at the moment, though not for the normal lazy and unmotivated reasons. I have a twin brother, and he's been pretty toxic at times, but the rest of the family just puts up with it because he's just, quote, less socially aware. For various reasons, he usually performed better in school, had more similar interests to my dad, and was always viewed as the oldest kid, even though we're twins and got all the perks, responsibilities that usually go with such. Well, he crossed a line with me, and I told him to stop, and that wasn't okay. Instead of stopping, he got defensive, and then mad, and we had a fight before I told him to get out of my house. We didn't talk for a week, and then I tried to smooth things out, saying we both probably could have handled the situation better. And this is why I got mad. He proceeded to get defensive again, say I was blaming him for everything. Eventually, he'd try to say he understood and everything was fine, but then start hurling insults. When I called him out that he denied that he did anything and that I was just being sensitive. So I told him I was done and proceeded to not talk to him aside from family gatherers for a few months. And even then, only to acknowledge he existed and said something, but wouldn't add anything. He recently reached out to apologize for initially overstepping, and I told him that would have been fine months ago, but we were long past it. I told him that I needed to see a change in behavior before a relationship with him was worth the effort. Mostly the defensive, prideful, and narcissistic tendencies. He has had to stop. Of course, he took that extremely badly, got defensive, and told me that I didn't need to attack him that way. This whole time, my mother especially has been very clear that I should just forgive him and move on. However, I'm so tired of this kind of thing. She says he's my brother and we just need to make things right. But as far as I know, she's putting pressure on me to do so and keeps saying things like, "You're more socially aware than he is, and he's under a lot of stress right now, so maybe you should give him some slack." I don't expect or want a relationship where neither of us ever hurts the other one. All I want to do is be able to talk about it like we're adults, own up to our faults, and try to do better moving forward. How do you do that with someone who, when they hurt someone else and is told, they get defensive, turn themselves into the victim, and then go on the attack? I can't do that anymore. I don't get why my parents can't understand that. Story 55. The child. My mother always makes comments about my job and when I'm going to leave it. I used to be a preschool teacher, but it didn't pay anything. So after a few years staying home and concentrating on my kids, I began to work overnights at a grocery store. I know I have a bachelor's, but this is the job and shift that allow me to put my kids first and not have them in after-school programs or be scrambling around to find childcare if one is sick. They're 2 elementary-age kids. She isn't around to volunteer that. I'm just supposed to get a better job so she can brag to her friends. Story 56. Okay, I'm going to be that annoying poster that says I'm not disappointed about anything my children have done. because they are not children and have the right to live their own lives. I actually couldn't be prouder of who they are and what they have accomplished. My son married the sweetest woman on earth and moved to Chicago to be with her. He is a web developer and works for an insurance company. My daughter graduated from her college program with distinction, snagged a good job 2 months before graduation, and lives nearby. Story 57. At 18, he got with a woman who is open about her diagnosis of severe BPD. She caused some awfully damaging dramatic scenes and resulting upheavals in our family, and said about 6 years ago, she basically gave him an ultimatum. It's me or your mother and sister. His dad is out of the picture. He's 28 now and just got married to her. His sister and me weren't invited. He has never met his gorgeous nieces nor his sister's partner. We miss him so much and understand how hard it must be, but wish he could say no to her.